So welcome to Powerless Penguins United Big Book Study. This week I'm pleased to reintroduce Max D, who has kindly agreed to come along and continue with the book study. Over to you, Max.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you always, Lord, for your service, and to everybody in the background, the army that keeps this meeting going 7 days a week now. I appreciate you all a great deal. My name is Max. I'm an alcoholic, and you all know that drugs are a part of my story too. And it is always a pleasure and an honour to be of service at this meeting, or anywhere, quite frankly. To be able to do this particular book study is the bright spark of my week for sure. I was quiet before the meeting started. Every Saturday we have a number of cat stories, and it always makes me chuckle inside. But it also helps me with my tolerance thing, because I'm not a great fan of cats. So I love to hear all these little stories about what these cats have been up to. But the reason why I was quiet also was because as we move into page 89, as we start chapter 7, I was just reflecting on, thank you, Jim, for the emoji. It's just helping me continue with my tolerance of the cats. I've got cats flying all over the page now. Anyway, yeah, I was reflective on everything that we have up to this point. Okay, so we're moving into step 12. We know that on the previous page where we finished step 11, it talks about the fact that the next chapter is entirely devoted to step 12. Working with others. At this meeting, we're asked to raise our hands if we have over a year sober. And as this book study has gone on, more and more and more hands have been shown as to those that have attained with the grace that is greater than us over a year's sobriety, which is every week. Unreal to be able to see that. The little question in my mind this morning was, and you don't need to raise your hand, and it's not anything that I need to know, but it's just of interest to me that, you know, of all of those people that raised their hands to say they're over a year sober, how many people are actually working with others in the way that is set out in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is a requirement for your recovery, your permanent recovery. And even at that, those with less than a year who have had a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps, you know, how many of us on this platform today, having had that spiritual awakening as the result of the steps, are actually working with others as set out in the chapter, which is entirely devoted to step 12. For me, it's an interesting question for me to ponder, because I've got to watch myself in step 10. And I'm going to share really honestly with you guys this morning with regards to this. As part of my recovery, I've got to watch myself in step 10 as to what's rising to the surface in me with regards to my thought process around sponsorship and the specifics of what it says in working with others. I've got to watch myself, because I can become at times intolerant of the viewpoint that working with others doesn't mean sponsorship. because it does. You know, the reality of it is the number of people that are sitting on this meeting. How have we all got here? How have we had the most amazing miracle, blessed, if you want to use that word, phenomenal opportunity to be sitting in this meeting or any meeting across the world? How have we got that privilege? How have we got that honor? The reason why we have that privilege and honor is that somebody armed with the facts about themselves is working their 12th step program, because they understand the requirements of what it is to work with others. So in watching that and what rises to the surface in me, what it always comes back to is I've just got to do what I've been taught, because it doesn't matter what anybody else is doing. It's my responsibility to carry this message. Step 12 in the short form on page 60 clearly says, first part, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps. So everything right from the very front cover page all the way through to 164, having had a spiritual awakening of doing that work, the steps in full. The second part, we try to carry this message. The third part, and practice these principles in all of our affairs. What principles? The spiritual principles that are set out in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, plus the 12 traditions that guide us as our home groups, plus the 12 concepts that guide this fellowship across the entire world. I've got a toolkit laid at my feet that it talks about in There Is a Solution. That's the spiritual toolkit that is laid at my feet. Those 36 spiritual principles, which I have to bend down every single day and pick up in order for me to work with others. I keep emphasizing the word work because it takes work. You know, right back on page 14, and we're going to dance around the book today. We're not just going to stick to page 89. So if you've got your big book, get it out. The reason why I was quiet before the meeting is that I was getting to the points of all of the places that we're going to dance to. We're going to do that cha-cha-cha, as I call it, through these pages to get us to where we are at on page 89. This is work, and we have to do it with other people. And this isn't the first time you've heard about this sponsorship thing. We hear about it right from the very beginning. My personal experience with my sponsor was this. When they first approached me, and we're going to talk about that word approach, when they first approached me to say that they were the alcoholic, armed with the facts about themselves, and that they had the answer to all my problems. And I said, okay, I need that. Much against my own will, I said, right, okay. What they said to me was, in the first instance, do you think that you're an alcoholic and you have problems with that? Is your life unmanageable? And I kind of said, yeah, I think so. Knowing quite rightly deep down within 100% I was an alcoholic. Knowing deep down within that 100% my life was atrociously unmanageable. Now this was even before he opened the book with me. He just asked me these questions. He then said, so that first question covered step 1. The next question, do you believe? Or are you willing to believe in something higher than yourself? I didn't even know what he was talking about. But at that point, my life was so atrociously unmanageable, I just said yes. And the third point, that was covering step 2. Are you willing to come to believe that this power greater than yourself can restore you to sanity? And the third question was, when we do what we need to do with the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, will you sponsor other people? And I said yes. And I didn't even know what it meant, because I was so desperate at that point that I would have said yes to anything. Now here's the thing, and please place no opinion or judgment on this approach, because it worked for me, and it now works for so many people in the little army that we're building here in Belfast and wherever else. He then said to me, okay, because if you're not willing to do this and carry this message and sponsor intensive work, one alcoholic with another, I can't take you through the steps. Now that was a very matter-of-fact approach from the outset as to what the requirements of the work were for this program. From the outset, my sponsor was telling me the requirements of what needed to happen for me to attain the most wonderful life of full-blown recovery. Because that's what this is about. We don't come into these fellowships for relief. We come into these fellowships to be part of the solution. We have the honour, the privilege, blessed if you want to use that word, miracle, phenomenon that we are sitting here today, nearly 90 years after this book was put into print, because somebody else knew what their step 12 requirement was. And if you are sitting in this room having had a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps, and you're not fulfilling that assignment, and you're not fulfilling that mission, have a think about that. It's not for me to give an opinion. It's not for me to judge. It's for me to set out the spiritual principles that are set out within this, because it is crystal clear, laser precision what working with others will do for you. So it tells us on the previous page, there is action and more action. Faith without works is dead. That's the third time in the book that we've heard that. We hear it at the bottom of page 14. As we're in Bill Wilson's summary of the steps, when he talks about step 12, which we'll go into. Faith without works is dead again is on page 76, when we're talking about, moving in from our step 8 into step 9 and making our amends. So this is the third reminder that there is action in our program. So right at the very beginning, we hear about what it is that we're required to do and why we do this. But let's start at the first paragraph on the top of page 89. Practical experience. We're not going to get very far today because we're already going to stop after those two words. Practical experience. Listen to those words. Practice and action is what you need to experience. In working with others, in carrying this message, in sponsoring individuals, you've got to practice this and take the action and experience this. There's a writing from Bill W., who was one of the first 100 that wrote the book. And in one of his writings, he talks about the fact that, it's an important thing to demonstrate acts of kindness and compassion when we're in the rooms with the newcomer. And in giving that act of kindness and compassion, he talks about providing the newcomer with a glass of water. And that is an act of kindness and compassion. That line is taken totally out of context from what Bill was saying, because people use that as their 12-step work. And that's great if that's what works for you, because I can tell you now, the type of alcoholic that I am, giving people a glass of water would not have kept me sober. And that is just my experience. Yes, I can give people water. I can make a coffee in my meetings. Yes, I have those general acts of kindness and compassion. Of course I do. Of course I do. But that one single solitary gesture is not going to ensure your immunity from alcoholism. And it is very, very clear. And it says that within this chapter. It says it within this first page. Practice and action. It has shown these people that wrote this book, and let me tell you from bitter experience, I can tell you that this practice and action 100% shows that nothing, laser precision, nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. It's not really intensive to pick up a glass of water and hand it to somebody in a kind and compassionate way. That's dead easy. That's really easy. You know, on page 20, it tells us, my very life as an ex-problem drinker depends on my constant thought of others. Laser precision, constant thought of others. So I'm constantly thinking about being and doing acts of kindness and being compassionate and thoughtful and all of that, not only with alcoholics and those that have whatever addictions, but with everybody in my life. You know, we're practicing these principles in all of our affairs with everybody. But what we're talking about here is what we have to do for each other in these rooms to ensure permanent recovery. This intensive work is this is not the first time we've heard about it. It's not the first time that we've heard about sponsorship. In the foreword to the second edition, we have an amazing introduction as to what this is all about. XVI at the bottom paragraph, well, actually the second from bottom paragraph, it talks about Bill's experience when he went to Akron, and he was traveling all over the United States for about 6 months. And he came home and he spoke to Lois, his wife, and said, damn it, you know, I'm not getting anybody sober. 6 months of trying to carry this message. And he felt that he wasn't doing any justice to this because he wasn't getting anybody sober. But the response from Lois was, that doesn't matter. Because the reality of it is, you have remained sober by trying to carry the message. The reality of it is, I do this 12-step work because I'm an alcoholic, not because you are. It's a win-win situation. Of course it is. The byproduct of me doing my step 12 is that other people then have spiritual awakening as the result of the steps, and they're then able to carry this message too. But I do this because I'm an alcoholic, and it's the prescription that I need to take for the rest of my life to ensure my immunity from alcohol. Whether you want this solution or not, I'm still carrying the message and doing what I need to do with other alcoholics. And it's very clear about that as the sponsor, what I do with that as we move through the rest of this chapter. He goes on to say within that paragraph, he suddenly realized that in order to save himself, he must carry his message to another alcoholic. You know that old adage, there's no musts in AA. Well, there you go. There's one of them. He must carry his message to another alcoholic. It goes on in that bottom paragraph to say this seemed to prove, this sponsorship thing, that one alcoholic could affect another as no non-alcoholic could. It also indicated that strenuous work, page 89 talks about intensive work, it's the same thing. Strenuous work. One alcoholic with another, sponsorship, was vital to permanent recovery. Vital meaning life-giving. To permanent recovery. Isn't that amazing? The foreword to the second edition is talking about permanent recovery. The last paragraph in the foreword to the fourth edition talks about that we come to these fellowships to stay sober. Now, when I read that first with my sponsor, Permanent Recovery, I was all biz with myself. because I was thinking, happy days, I'm going to get permanent recovery, not even knowing what I had to do to get the permanent recovery. But that sounds good. That sounds pretty sweet, doesn't it? Permanent recovery instead of this life of misery and unmanageability, atrocious unmanageability, you know? Thinking that I look okay when I go out, when in actual fact I actually look as if I put my makeup on whilst I've been jumping on a trampoline. Do you know all of those silly little things? I'm thinking like I'm looking great and life is wonderful. And in actual fact, I don't know even how to, anyway, it doesn't matter, I'm not going to labour that point. But I thought it was just about me. Of course I did in the beginning, self-centered to the core. I couldn't see that I needed to be more useful to other people. By us getting sober, you as an individual having permanent recovery, it's not just about your own recovery, because in your 12-step work, you're ensuring permanent recovery across the world. We're in the miracles game here, people. We're in the miracles game. And I know that that word gets branded about a lot in Alcoholics Anonymous and in these fellowships, but it's mentioned so many times throughout these chapters in step 12. The miracles are amongst us. We are a demonstration of those miracles. My sponsor taught me that. And you're in the miracles game. One alcoholic at a time. That's all it takes. Yeah, one at a time. That's all we've got to do. It then goes on to talk about this intensive work. Bill's, is it the doctor's opinion? Sorry. First page, the doctor's opinion. We're not even into the 164 pages yet. The first couple of paragraphs, it talks about Bill's experience in the course of his third treatment. He acquired certain ideas concerning a possible means of recovery. Well, what were those ideas? As part of his rehabilitation, he commenced to present his conceptions to other alcoholics, impressing upon them that they must, there's that word again, do likewise with others. I.e., he got out, started carrying the message, having had a spiritual awakening, passed it on to somebody else, and he told them, do you know what you've got to do? You've got to do the same. Intensive work, one alcoholic with another. You've got to pass it on. You see, the reason why I'm doing this work is I've got a couple of nieces and nephews. They might end up needing this fellowship. They don't even know they need this fellowship yet. I'm keeping my doors open for them. And how do I keep my doors open for them? I work with other alcoholics. I build this army. 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8, 8 becomes 16, 16 becomes 32. You know, I'm not that good at maths. I can't go any higher. But the reality of this is, and I learned this from my sponsor too, if I was in the numbers game, if I was in the sales game, numbers are important, aren't they? The bottom line is important. In sponsorship, I'm not in the numbers game. And what I mean by that is, and this might sound contradictory, but take it in the spirit in which it's meant. I don't measure my success on results. My mission is to try and carry the message. If I told you, which I'll never do with anybody, if I told you, or if anybody of our gang, of our crew, of our tribe told you the number of people that we had to sponsor to get one through the steps and have a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps, nobody would do this work. But that's not what this is about. Of all of the people that we sponsor, right? Of all of the people that we sponsor, we could name the people that are still coming to the meetings. We can still name the people that are being of service. hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people brought through the program. Not everybody stays. Not everybody remains. Not everybody finishes the steps. That's none of my business. What my business is my mission and my assignment to open the big book, to keep on turning the pages. If they show up, I show up. If they proceed through the pages, happy days. If they don't, like it says on the next page, I waste no time. I move on to the next one, because we are hardly scratching the surface of the people that require our help. And throughout this chapter, they talk about we leave with a friend. So if somebody doesn't complete the steps with me, I'll always leave with a friend. They'll always have my number, because inevitably, like it says, in less than a year, even with a few months of making their promises, as is set out in More About Alcoholism, I can guarantee that that person will be on the phone to me sooner than they even realise. I do this because I'm an alcoholic, not because you are. The bottom line of numbers is not relevant. This is not a competition. Oh, how many people are you sponsoring? Oh, well, I've got 75. Oh, well, I've got 76. Yeah. It's not about that. Nobody will ever know how many people I've sponsored. They don't need to. They don't need to. Nobody needs to. We start with one. It then goes on in Bill's story, page 14. I love this. This faith without works is dead. Abby Thatcher emphasised the absolute necessity of demonstrating these principles in all of my affairs. That's what he was telling Bill. We must practice these principles in all of our affairs. Particularly, was it imperative? Paramount is another word that they use in the doctor's opinion, more important than anything else. It was particularly imperative to work with others as he had worked with me, taking him through to have a spiritual awakening. Now, we know that Abby was part of the Oxford groups and all of that, but what we're talking about here is our 12-step program, which, obviously evolved to the point where they needed to put it in print so that we could sit here nearly 90 years later and still have that solution. Faith without works was dead, he said. And I absolutely adore the rest of this paragraph, and how appallingly true for the alcoholic. For if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life, how? Through work and self-sacrifice for others. Work, sponsorship, and self-sacrifice for others. He could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. Because let me tell you, for the rest of my life, I'm certainly going to have trials and low spots ahead. In the last number of years since I've become recovered, I have most definitely certainly had trials and low spots. And let me tell you, I could never, ever, ever have got through them without this intensive work, one alcoholic with another. It is amazing, a miracle, what this one-to-one work does for you, as well as what it does for the other individual. And I know I'm speaking to the converted here, I know I'm speaking to the choir, but somebody on here might not know what this is all about. I make no apologies for emphasizing this and re-emphasizing this, because I am so incredibly passionate about our opportunity to help so many people. And we have got so easy access to these host of friends, like it talks about on page 17. A host of friends. We've got access to a platform where we don't even need to leave our house to engage with these alcoholics. We're not like the people back in the 1930s that are having to travel across huge areas, who haven't probably got access to telephones. You know that story, the Mayfair Flower Hotel, where Bill had to go to drop a dime into the phone to get in touch with an alcoholic when he was feeling a little bit tight. We're so lazy these days. even though the accessibility to get to people that need this solution is so easy. My sponsor taught me this. Working with others, it's a call to action. Practical action. Practice action, which must be experienced. It goes on to say, if he did not work, he would surely drink again. And if he drank, he would surely die. Then, faith would be dead indeed. Because the reality is, with us, it's just like that. I love the matter-of-factness in which they talk about this. Step 12 is where I enlarge my spiritual life. Through work, hard work, intensive work, and self-sacrifice. My sponsor taught me this. If it's not inconvenient, you're not doing enough of it. I keep referring to my sponsor. The love I have for that man. The vitality that he has given to me in my life, because he simply showed up to do his step 12, is phenomenal. And in the last 5 or 6 months, I have had some really intensive personal stuff going on, and I could never, ever have got through it without intensive work, one alcoholic with another. When things get tough, I work harder. When things are going wrong, I work harder. When bad news is provided, I work harder. When there is uncertainty and I don't know what the outcome is going to be for my life, I work harder. I don't stop. I don't pull back. I don't take it easy. No, my sponsor taught me. We show up. Because it goes on to say, it works when other activities fail. That's the next line in that paragraph. Step 12 works when all other activities fail. So what that means is this. We know that our daily reprieve every single day for the rest of our lives is step 10, 11 and 12. Okay, step 10 and 11 isn't about making myself feel better. That is the byproduct of that spiritual practice. Okay. Step 10 and 11 is making me more effective in step 12. That's the purpose of step 10 and 11 for me anyway. But when I think step 10 isn't working, when I'm watching myself and asking God to remove all of these things that are blocking me from the awareness to God's presence, and I'm resolutely turning my thoughts and I feel as if this stuff isn't working, when I'm intensely doing my inventories, when I'm doing my unawakening, when I'm, pausing when agitated through the day, those 3 beautiful meditations that we've talked about over the last number of weeks, when I feel step 10 and 11 isn't working, I feel my human mind, my human thinking, this isn't working, this isn't working, this isn't working. I'm going to stop praying. I'm going to stop meditating. I'm going to throw that step 10 out the window. No, that's not what we do. We keep on practicing, because what's happening internally, we'll never know really, right? Step 10 and 11 makes me more effective in 12. When I think the other activities are failing, watching, asking, turning. Other activities are failing, prayer and meditation. When I think they're failing, what do? I throw myself all the harder into working with others, because when I think other activities are failing, step 12 changes the day. Sitting with another alcoholic changes my mindset altogether. It works when I think all other activities are failing. Like, infinite power is what we have running in and through us. In my finite mind, I think this isn't working. Shut up, Max. Pick up the book. Help another alcoholic. You think you have problems? Wise up. Sit in front of another alcoholic that needs your help, and you'll soon find out what problems you have. None. Zilch. Zero. Because this program of action and this program of recovery, this practical action that I'm experiencing every single day, solves every single one, all of my problems, as set out in Bill's story, as set out in More About Alcoholism. Do you see where this goes? The writers of this book, this golden thread that runs right the way through from the front cover page to 164, never lets me forget what my mission and my assignment is. And it is powerful. This is our 12th suggestion. And somebody's going to point this out. 12th suggestion is in italics. It means it's important. The word suggestion, people will get into a load of windy arguments about this and a bit of controversy about, well, it's only a suggestion, I don't have to do it. No, that's not correct. A suggestion, yeah, it is whatever a suggestion is. I suggest that you do that. But if you're working with a sponsor and you're having a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps, we know that on page 60, these are principles, spiritual principles by which we're guided. In the AA dictionary, principles, another word back in the day in the 30s was laws. These are spiritual laws that must be followed. If we don't follow those spiritual laws, we get into trouble, really. If I break the law in this, third dimension of existence, I get into trouble with the law. I don't want to get in trouble. Alcohol is a subtle foe. Cunning, baffling, powerful. If I don't follow these spiritual laws, these spiritual principles, I'll end up right the way back at step one. I don't want that to happen. And all we've got to do, carry this message to other alcoholics. Boom, exclamation mark. That's all you've got to do. No big deal. It's not complicated. All you're doing is giving away what has been given to you. You can help when no one else can. You can help when no one else can. Like it says in the foreword to the second edition. An alcoholic versus a non-alcoholic. Page 18. The ex-problem drinker, armed with the facts about themselves, can build that relationship with another alcoholic in a matter of hours, when it would have taken years for a non-alcoholic even to try to touch the sides, scratch the surface of what needs to take place. If you've had a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps, you're armed with the facts about yourself as to how you can help another alcoholic. It's the message that's within the book. I say this all the time. I love it when potential sponsees, prospects as they call them here, in working with others. I love when you get that phone call from somebody and they interview you. Max, how long have you been sober? How many people have you sponsored? How many meetings do you go to? Have you got a family? Are you divorced? Have you got any money? Do you drive? You got a job? All those questions. None of that is relevant. All you need to know, armed with the facts about myself, I've had a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps. I've got the solution that you need. When do you want to start? Interview done. Over. It's really that simple. I can help when no one else can. Coming up to this point, sponsees will always say to me, oh, but I can't do this like you do, Max. That's not the requirement. Your mission is your mission. Your assignment is your assignment. Your assignment is not to be Max. You carry this message, having had your bitter experience, sharing your experience of turning the 164 pages and showing up, sharing what your sponsor told you. You've got as much resource as I have. An abundance of inner resource that is no longer unsuspected, like it says in the spiritual experience at the back of the book, page 567, in case anybody has forgotten. You've got an abundant inner resource. You're armed with the facts about yourself. Open the book. Start. And don't go with that rehab talk. Oh, you've got to wait 2 years before you get a sponsee. No. Once you've had the spiritual awakening as the result of the steps, it's your mission, it's your job, it's your assignment. I know people listening to this are going to be, is she going to talk about this? Is she keep on going on? Is she going to keep on going on about this? Yeah, I am. Because the little penny might drop somewhere. Wait 2 years before you can sponsor anybody? Give me a break. What are you going to do in the meantime? Just sit about and contemplate your navel? Oh, I wonder. No. I'm just going to keep on giving glasses of water, you know? You know, that rehab talk, grow a plant for 2 years. See if you can look after that before you can look after everybody else. Really? Give me a break. I can't keep a cactus alive in my house. So I would have been waiting about for a long time to try to sponsor somebody. You don't go on holiday for 2 years in case you drink again. What? No. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps and been given this solution, I can go anywhere on this planet and not be affected. Like it says in working with others later on, I can go to Greenland and somebody will rock up with a bottle of whiskey. I'm still immune to it. I live in Ireland, for God's sake. There's pubs on every corner of the street. I'm totally immune to alcohol because of this work. So don't wait 2 years. What my sponsor taught me, he closed the book when we got to the end. And he said, over to you. And he closed the Zoom channel. That was it. That was the Friday. The next day I went to a meeting on the Saturday. I got my first sponsee and never stopped. And will never stop. And this is not me being egoic. This is me just telling you my job. I've got a new employer, like it says in those 3rd step promises. And as long as I stay close to him and do his work well, I will be immune from alcohol. It goes on to say, you can secure their confidence when others fail. When the psychiatrists, psychologists, addiction services, rehab, all of that fails, when the aggregate of all of those things, all of that stuff added together still won't work, then I can secure the confidence when others fail. Simple as that. One conversation. You've got those 2 little points on page 44 where you can decipher straight in, boom. Is it likely that this person is an alcoholic? Have you tried some controlled drinking? How's that gone for you? Have you tried to stop altogether? How's that gone for you? Well, it haven't worked. Well, in that case, you're probably an alcoholic. So let's open the book. Simple as that. Not for you to diagnose this individual. We know they have to diagnose themselves as set out on page 31. All of the instructions are there. Every single last bit of it is in this book. That's what makes it so incredibly easy to do, yet we complicate the back end out of it because we don't do what's suggested from the clear-cut directions. Because we also need to remember they are very ill. We are very ill when we come into this room. The foreword to the first edition reminds us of that. We read this at my home group every single meeting. And it simply says, many do not comprehend that the alcoholic is a very sick person. Yeah, I once was a very sick person. But they give this little promise here. We are sure that our way of living has its advantages for all. So you may be sitting here, a very sick person, but let me tell you, our program of action and our program of full-blown recovery has its advantages for all, and this way of living will change your thought process, your perception, every single fibre of your being in a course of a very short space of time. Jim's story, just going to touch on this. We hear about this and more about alcoholism, that amazing story. This guy, page 35, he did the steps up to step 11. But he failed to enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice with others. He loved watching himself in step 10 and praying and meditating in step 11. Loved doing all of that, but never opened the book with another alcoholic. And as a result of that, what happened? To his consternation, he got drunk again. What my friend talks about is that Jim was doing an 11-step self-help program, not a 12-step full-blown recovery program. I love that. So see if you're sitting in step 11, loving life, praying and meditating, sitting in the yoga position with your hands held up to the sky, doing the home thing and all of that. Brilliant. Knock yourself out. Keep doing that. Love a bit of that myself. It's not going to keep you through these certain trials and low spots ahead. I'm looking at Sam, his little face on the screen. He keeps laughing and smiling. I know I'm a bit nuts, Sam, but I'm passionate about this stuff. Do you know what I mean? I'm passionate about this stuff. Because I wouldn't be here if this lunatic sponsor of mine wasn't matter of fact, wasn't direct. And he's not really a lunatic. I love him with all my heart. But he kept me focused. He kept me on point. He didn't let me away with anything. He didn't let me away with anything. And the beautiful conversations that we have now is, I would say to him, why did you keep going with me? Why did you keep going with me when I literally put him through the ringer? He was only a short time sober, I think 8 months himself when he started working with me, this lunatic. Why did you keep going with me? And he just simply says, I don't know. I don't know. Because he was guided by something else, an entity greater than himself, but he was also guided by his sponsor, because that's how this works. I also asked him, how did you know what to do? He said, I didn't. I just kept turning the pages. I just kept showing up. I just kept having faith in the process. So everything that he was telling me to do for this program of recovery to be successful was his mantra to himself. Intensive work, one alcoholic with another saves the day for both of us. That's the gift. That is the beauty of this program. That is the gift of sponsorship. And if you're not experiencing it, and if you're not doing it, you are missing out on so much in life. This next paragraph, sensational, phenomenal. This brings it a life better than any person, I think, could. You might want to close your eyes. You might want to just think about this, what this means to you, what this could mean to you, because this is what it was all about. Life will take on new meaning. To watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives. Life takes on a completely and utterly new meaning. You've heard me say this before, my life is not about me. It's genuinely not. Over 50 times in these pages it tells us about how we become more useful. Not only within this fellowship, but in our entire life. When I see the people recover, when you watch people recover, Yes, we see it all the time at the meetings, but when you see intensive work, one alcoholic with another, the bottom of page 15, it talks about that fellowship. When you see families reunited, the worst possible domestic situations righted, home groups being built from one person deciding they want to set up their own group, sponsees coming together to do what they need to do in their little part of the world to grow the fellowship that they wish to seek, guided by a vision for you. Working with others in a vision for you is a call to action. Building these little groups out of the group in Belfast has become something in other parts of England and other parts of Scotland and other parts of America. You know, little did I know that I would be sponsoring people all over the world because of the ease that this platform gives to us online. You know, the continents across the world, we're building that army of recovery. And it is so incredibly easy. If you've had a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps and you haven't got one sponsee, that's pure bone idle laziness. Seriously. And this is where I have to watch, you know, my judgment and opinion. There's no reason why you can't have one person. In that paragraph, it talks about the fellowship in the lowercase f. It's talking about that camaraderie, that friendliness that is set out on page 17. And it's worth being reminded of that as well. We're talking about the fact that all sections of the country have been pulled together. We are people who would normally not mix. But there exists among us a fellowship, a friendliness, and an understanding which is indescribably wonderful. That's what happens with the newcomers when they come into the room. They come a part of this camaraderie, the friendliness, all of that fellowship. But the fellowship is not going to be enough to keep you sober. The fellowship is not going to keep you immune from alcohol. The fellowship that you wish to be part of is the fellowship of the Spirit. Fellowship with the uppercase F. You've had the spiritual awakening as the result of the steps. You're part of this fellowship of the Spirit. You've moved from that fellow that's come in like a shaken little puppy. You've moved into this bright individual, tapping into that inner resource where you've got so much energy to keep on giving this away. The more we give this away, the more energy we get back to keep on giving it away. We do not rest on our laurels when it comes to this either, you know? This next paragraph goes on to talk about the fact that, and please take the paragraph in the spirit in which it's meant, because these guys are talking about when they were running about the United States with very few facilities in comparison to what we have now. This is in the context of when the book was written. Perhaps you're not acquainted with drinkers who want to recover. There's lots of people that I approach that don't want to recover. But I move on to the next. I keep on going. I don't stop and I don't wait on these people coming to me. I approach them. That's what this is all about. It's my 12-step work. So I've got to take the step forward. I've got to offer the help. I don't sit about contemplating my navel again, waiting on somebody rapping on my door and saying, "Hey, Margs, I love the sound of what you say. Would you be my sponsor?" No, I'm approaching them all the time, all the time, all the time. And, you know, if somebody asks if I can be responsible and I haven't got enough time or I haven't got enough space because I'm, you know, doing everything else that's in life, I'll refer to somebody else as much as I possibly can. Sometimes it's not humanly possible to answer every request and all of that. I get that. That's human life. I'm not a guru. I'm not a miracle worker in the sense of I can see everybody all of the time. That's not how this works. But through this population that we're building of recovered alcoholics, we can get you to somebody really, really quickly who will work with you. We don't even have to do this part. You can easily find somebody asking a few doctors, ministers, priests or hospitals. They will only be too glad to assist you. Yeah, we don't even have to do all of the work that these guys did. Yes, we do go to, you know, our public information work. We can go to hospitals. We can go to rehabs. We can go to prisons. We can go to doctors' surgeries. We can go to all of those places. It doesn't even have to be that difficult because there's a whole tranche of people on the screen that need help. And don't start out as an evangelist or a reformer. I was that person when I first started sponsoring. It was like, oh my God, big book, there's no other way, la la la. Really would have rubbed people up the wrong way where they didn't want to spend any time with me. And it's still the same, you know, some meetings I go into, they don't want to see me because I'm there with my big book and they know they're going to get a big book message. But you know what? I don't really care because I have a mission and I'm paid really well for it. They're not my employer. The God of my understanding is my employer. That's who I report to, not Joe Blogg sitting in the street who's telling me, or not Joe Blogg sitting in the meeting who's telling me they're not a glum lot. And I'm looking at them going, well, you want to tell your face that? You know that line I always say. Unfortunately, a lot of prejudice exists. If I go in with the evangelist approach and pushing this on people, it's not going to be very nice for them. I will be handicapped if we arouse this prejudice, you know? Ministers, doctors are competent and you can learn much from them if you wish, but it happens that because of your own drinking experience, you can be uniquely useful to other alcoholics. Uniquely useful. Your bitter experience, no matter, like it says in the 9-step promises, no matter how far down the scale you have gone, you have a special power. You have a superpower running in and through you to help you with. So here's what we've got to do. We don't judge. We don't give opinion. Cooperate. Never criticize. Never criticize. To be helpful is our only aim. Every time I open the book, all I'm there to do is to be helpful. Every time I take a call, all I'm there is to be helpful. You might not like the matter-of-fact approach that I take sometimes with it, but we cut through the nonsense. We cut through the BS. We get to the crux of the problem. We direct you to the spiritual principles. We get you to a sponsor. We get you to the intensive work. And as a result of that, all your problems are solved. So I hope all of this has made some sense. And if you haven't got a sponsee today, get one for next week. Because that's when you'll find out more. I'll leave it at that, love.